Welcome to Lesson 2 of a Neuroscience Perspective on A Course in Miracles. Today's lesson states, I have given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me. Another sentence from the text that I think is relevant and useful for this podcast is the statement that innocent or true perception means that you never misperceive and always see truly. You never see what does not exist and always see what does. This relates a lot to the first lesson. The first lesson being that nothing I see means anything. And as we discussed in that lesson, what it is touching on is the fact that nothing we perceive with our physical senses has any inherent value in and of itself, and only carries significance and meaning because of our experience with our physical environment and the experiences we've had in our lives up until each point that we experience a new physical stimulus, a new stimulus in our physical environment. This is a continuation of that and is really emphasizing the point that we give everything we see meaning. So the only way, going back to the other sentence I mentioned, that true perception means that we never misperceive and always see truly, that we never see what does not exist and always see what does. The only way this is possible is if we were to clear our mind of all past associations to whatever it is that we are seeing in front of us in that moment. That is the only way that we would be able to see something as it truly is in each moment. Another analogy of that is when someone uses the term a blank palette, that each situation or each person that we see, we decide to not bring any past associations when we are experiencing that person or that thing. One example would even be something as simple as when we look at different creatures in the world, insects or animals, you'll notice that soon after a child reaches a certain age, they begin to associate certain animals or colors or insects or creatures as gross and disgusting and icky, and other ones as beautiful. They will decide that a butterfly is beautiful, a ladybug is cute, but a beetle might be ugly, or a spider is icky and scary. And a lot of this has to do with conditioning that we've had as we grow up. So if you were to notice an infant's reaction to the same thing, you would see that an infant does not necessarily put a category onto what it sees. So it will not necessarily see a beetle and think that it is ugly, and yet see a ladybug, which is basically a type of beetle, but with different coloring on it, as cute. As we grow older, we are on subconscious and unconscious levels absorbing opinions and categories to put things in as we grow older. And this comes from our family environment, from society, from school, and a constant bombardment of our physical senses by media and people's voices, people's opinions. And so what's happening on a neurological level is that we are constantly having different networks being activated in our mind that associate certain things with beauty, for example, and certain things as being disgusting. To give some labels as an example. And as we continue to receive those messages from our home environment, from our school, from the media, those networks continue to get activated, and like I mentioned in the previous lesson, the more a certain network of neurons gets activated, the more likely they will be activated in the future. And so we begin to have networks that almost make it impossible without intentional effort. These networks almost make it impossible for us to see an object in a new light, in a fresh light, or in Buddhism they call beginner's mind, or even beginner's sight, that every object we see, we have already given meaning to, by the mere fact that we've lived more than a day. So the only way to override this is if we use intentional effort to become aware of the fact that we have associated meaning to various things in our surroundings. And in fact, the mere exercise of observing ourselves, activates a completely different part of our mind that is very different from the parts of the mind that are associated with automatic reaction, fight or flight response. So what this lesson is really getting to is the idea that nothing we see is neutral in terms of how we, by default, experience our physical world with our physical senses. The only way to truly see something, referring again to that passage that I read earlier, the only way to not misperceive things, the only way to truly see something as it is now, would be to intentionally put effort onto just the simple awareness of the fact that we are possibly not perceiving it as it is now. And on a very personal level, I think a lot of us have experienced that in our families, where a person may feel that they have evolved and grown over time, and yet our family will continue to see us through eyes of the past. And it is very difficult for them to see us as evolved beings, because they continue to see us with eyes that are associating us with the meaning that they have put on who we are and the labels that they have associated with us. And again, on a neurological level, there are pathways dedicated to each person we have in our lives. Some people call these schemas, even emotional schemas, where our mind will, when we perceive someone that we know, there will be a network of neurons dedicated to that person, and that network will get activated every time we see them, to the point where we are not truly seeing most people we know as they truly are in the present moment. We are seeing them based on neuronal firings, neuronal, like communication between neurons that is happening in our mind that is based on previous experiences with that person. And that's why it's very difficult if we, for example, are angry with somebody, to later see them and honestly see them in a new light. But like I mentioned earlier, one of the most powerful ways that we can override these automatic associations that we have that are based on our past and that prevent us from truly seeing things as they are, the most powerful way to do this is to intentionally put effort on attempting to see things as they truly are. It will be very difficult for us to succeed in our human form because of the way our minds are, but the simple act of becoming aware of this automatically activates a different part of our mind. Becoming the observer to ourselves is a very different part of our mind than the part that gets activated when we are looking through filters from the past. So again, just to repeat this lesson, I have given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me. This is just something to become aware of. And the point of this text, A Course in Miracles, is to break things down very slowly. So I'm adding a lot of words to what the passage is actually presenting. The exercise is very simply to look around the room and to repeat that phrase. I have given everything I see, for example, in this room, all the meaning that it has for me. And to just very quickly glance, without having a longer glance on certain objects than others, to have a very equal kind of distribution of focus on everything we see in the room around us. And to even notice, for example, that our eyes may linger on certain objects longer than the other. That is an immediate giveaway that we have put some sort of meaning onto that object, because if we're looking at it a little longer, we are possibly trying to analyze it, or there's maybe an emotional reaction. We may like something more than another. We may find one object more appealing to look at than the other. And these are all giveaways that we have already associated some meaning to that object. And we are not truly seeing the world around us as it truly is in each moment, without any meaning associated with it. And I really like to go back to, I refer to this a lot, but looking at how an infant sees the world. And you'll see that infants are often mesmerized by lots of things. And some of the joy that we get when we are around children is that they find joy and they find delight and wonder in very simple things. And part of that is because it feels new, because they're experiencing things for the first time, and they haven't yet developed a kind of dedicated network of neurons to categorizing things yet. So there's still a lot of firing happening. There's a lot of different networks getting activated all at once. There's a lot of excitement in the mind when a person sees something for the first time. And so really that is the simplicity of this lesson, is simply to become aware of the fact that everything we see, including people, we are not actually seeing them as they truly are. We are misperceiving things because we are associating meaning based on our life experience up until each point that we encounter something. We are associating meaning to that and not seeing it as it is. So that's it for today's lesson. We will continue with the next lesson after this, and that one is, the statement is, these thoughts do not mean anything. So that will be for the next lesson. Thank you very much for joining me.